Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What if I told you that since the 1950s, the number of dual-parent homes has fallen from 93% to a mere 68%? Well, according to a study conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau, this is the case. My name is Stewart, and tonight I'd like to talk to you about dual-parent homes and the impacts that they have on children, and how I would like to push for a change and end the perpetuating cycle of single-parent homes in order to create a better life for our children. So, growing up, my mother and father, they were divorced at a very young age. My mother then moved and remarried. This man then became my now known father. However, they soon were divorced when I was still in elementary school, leaving my mother, my two brothers, and myself. My mother worked in excess of 40 hours a week, being a small business owner. My brothers and I, we all attended school as well as school sports. Our lives were very chaotic. There was not a lot of time to enjoy sitting down for a family dinner. The nights that we didn't have sports, I would prepare food for my brothers and myself. I would make sure that all of our homework was done, that we were bathed and put to bed at the appropriate time. This is unfortunately the case as being seen more and more so throughout the United States. And this is the exact issue that I want to put an end to. So, there is an increasing number of children being raised in single-parent homes or broken homes. And this is based on multiple studies from well-accredited sources that I have found and navigated through. And tonight I would like to talk to you about this. First off, I would like to discuss the importance of two parents in a household. Now, according to the Center for Parenting Education, there are two key portions of parenting. Typically, there is the individual that is known as the nurturer and the individual that is known as the structurer. Now, if these are out of balance, typically leads to issues in the development of the child. Typically, if a child is over-nurtured, they come to be what we know as spoiled. However, if a child comes to be over-structured, they eventually grow up, in most cases, to be either resentful or withdrawn from society as they have a hard time connecting and relating. They see things more as a punishment than they do relationships. Typically, children fearing punishment try and fly under the radar and hide their mistakes and vulnerabilities from those, making it difficult to develop strong relationships in the future, as well as healthy relationships. And with these two key factors being distinguished and the importance of the two parenting styles, I would then like to talk to you about the three ways that this impacts children. Those being academically, socially, and spiritually. So, educationally, according to the National Center for Health Statistics, the high school dropout rate of children of divorced parents is roughly 2 times that than children with parents that did not come from a divorce. Now, if you move on to look at those statistics, women that contain a bachelor's degree, 78% of them experience a marriage lasting longer than 20%. Lasting longer than 20 years, my apologies. Now this is a stark contrast to that of their high school counterparts. Women that have a high school diploma or less, only 40% of them see marriages lasting longer than 20%. Now, this may not seem important at first. However, the number of parents, I apologize, give me a moment while I collect my thoughts. Now, the number of parents that come from divorce homes, as I stated earlier, are starkly on the rise as compared to those coming from dual family homes. Thus, the likelihood of this perpetuating the situation is only growing. And that is why I want to talk about next the issue that we see in society when this happens. The social impacts of being raised in a single-parent home, according to Princeton University, is that boys, in a study that they conducted, boys are more likely to avoid trouble with the law when they grow up in a home with their father. Boys raised apart from their fathers were found to have 2 to 3 times more likely end up in jail by the age of 30. Now, looking at the contrasting side of this, daughters whose fathers were not present before they turned 6 were approximately 5 times more likely to end up pregnant as teenagers. Now, without statistical backing, typically the trend that I had seen growing up was when teenagers became pregnant, the typical course of action was that of dropping out of school and able to care for their child. Now, this is not a judgment, rather an observation. Now, if we look at the statistic that I had provided earlier about women that have a higher degree of education tend to have happier, longer marriages, you can see how these two directly correspond to one another, and how this situation may be self-building and perpetuating itself further and further on. Now, lastly, religious. Now, according to a study conducted by Baylor University, adults who are divorced are more likely to switch religions, or disassociate themselves from institutional religions altogether. Now, what does this mean? Typically, when you encounter a child that has been raised in a home with either contradicting religions, you tend to see issues within the marriage. Either religion is not discussed within the family, or it leads to divorce. Now, when you see a divorce in a family that both sides are Christian, say, this is where we begin to encounter issues. The number of children that begin to disassociate themselves from Christ begins to grow as their parents have turned their backs on the vows that they had made in front of the Lord. Now, this continues to perpetuate the issue as many relationships can be founded through a strong relationship in God. Now, I think that this is an epidemic that is spreading across our country, and I have 2 solutions I'd like to present to you. First, it's fairly simple. It's premarital counseling. This approach is rather preventative. Many times it is seen that couples become transfixed upon one another and initiate their relationship before they are able to discuss many of their key views and values, especially when it comes to raising a child, finances, or lifestyle choices. Before my wife and I were married, we attended a form of premarital counseling. And this laid out many guidelines on how we wanted to live our lives. Even though we thought we knew each other, having this discussion about what we wanted and what we wanted to do brought out a lot of light in our differences, and we were able to find a common ground in order to have a healthy, thriving marriage. And this is what I believe more people should be beginning to do. They should be able to have a better understanding of what premarital counseling means. It's not that you fear your relationship, but you respect it and you want it to last longer in order to provide your children with a better, more stable life. Next, my next approach is something that I think we are seeing more of, and that is the view that it takes a village to raise a child. When a single mother or father add an additional member to assist with raising their child, the child is exposed to more variables, more views, more of the work is distributed. The pressure is no longer on just the parent, whether that's the mother or the father. Say a grandparent steps in and they help raise this child. Now the parent is able to cultivate that relationship. That parent is able to not spend as many hours working per week trying to also pay for a babysitter. Now the parent can work a standard job, or the parent can take that vacation they want. They are able to develop a healthy relationship with their child, as well as help the child grow their worldview. This also alleviates a lot of the pressure and lessens the likelihood that the child will feel burdened and cause the eventuality of resenting their parents. In conclusion, I personally think that we should begin to push more for not so strongly advocating the strong, independent parent. I understand that many of us do what we have to do, and we don't always have someone there for us. And I respect that. However, I also respect the fact that our children deserve better in the future. Our children deserve to have the best education possible, and they deserve for us to help them break the cycle. Because if we don't do it now, when does the cycle end? I think we need to take into consideration not only how we feel in the relationship, but how this is going to impact our future and future generations. Now, I appreciate your time, and I hope that on some level I have made an impact on your views, and I wish you the best tonight. Thank you.